this is an edition where you get to dance, you get to sing, you get to brush back and be fully entertained. We are coming to you from Mariah for the Mariah Old Time Wedding in the Tobago Heritage Festival 2023. Of course, this is a reenactment of what weddings on our island once were. This is going to be a great episode as we feature the Tobago Heritage Festival 2023. Come along with us. I'm Davia Chambers. In our stories, we highlight Lekoto folktales and superstitions, the Black Rock Sea Festival, and Emancipation Day celebrations 2023. Stay with us. Let's talk Tobago. We'll be right back.
It's everything about the people.
Come out and face the people and them and talk whatever in their mind to talk.
Signal Hill, Patience Hill Electoral District. It's your turn. The THA Executive Council is coming to meet with you as we continue our district town hall meeting series. We invite you to come out in your numbers at the Patience Hill Community Center on Tuesday, 8th August at 6:30 p.m. as the Executive Council members give updates on existing and upcoming programs and projects. You also get the opportunity to share your concerns and ask questions. So join us from 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August 8th at the Patience Hill Community Center for the Executive Council's District Town Hall meeting. People of Signal Hill, Patience Hill, Spring Garden, and the Spring Garden Trace, Orange Hill Road, Wim Estate, and Cemetery Street, Lambo, this meeting is for you. Remember, your voice matters.
And there could be no Tobago Heritage Festival without the Lekoto folktales and superstitions. And it was a very entertaining night. But don't take my word for it. Have a look at this story.
The Lekoto folktales and superstitions has always been a major highlight of the Tobago Heritage Festival. Despite the rains, many came out in their numbers to witness the retelling of our cultural traditions. This year's presentation, titled The Duke of Lekoto, Crave All, Lose All, was presented by the Lekoto Close Connection Cultural Club.
I have a sword in my hand, help me to use it now. I have a sword in my hand, help me to use it now. I'm going away to watch and pray. I have a sword in my hand, help me to use it now.
I'm really enjoying the show. It really brings back the feeling of the community. It is a good cultural show. I brought some friends here who's also experiencing it for the first time, and they're having a spectacular time.
I would say that I am definitely enjoying the production tonight. You have a little bit of drama, you have the we twang. So it is really interesting, and it kind of like reminds us of how things used to be a long time, because I could tell you, I remember getting my cut tail as well back then, right? So it is really nice, and I think we should definitely continue with this.
I'm Kian Walker Hazel for Let's Talk Tobago.
For this story, you've got to grab your bottle, your spoon, and a drink of choice, because right now we head to Scarborough for the Rum Shop Lime, which has returned to the calendar of the Tobago Heritage Festival. Enjoy!
In its 36th year, the Tobago Heritage Festival has reintroduced on its calendar the Rum Shop Lime. And oh boy, was it an experience! The experience showed how the rum shop was a meeting place for adults in the village long ago. The business of the village was aired by special characters over food and alcohol, bottles, food, and the drink of your choice, where one can be sure to hear all about Tobago village affairs.
Tonight is been dubbed the Rum Shop Lime. It was really designed to revisit the days, the ancient traditional days of that, where the rum shop was like a university in sort where you are just going to this place and meet everybody and anybody doing anything and perhaps more under the influence of alcohol or influenced by alcohol in its presence.
Yeah, I come every year for the heritage. It'd be nice, you know what I mean? So I love it. I like some of the old time stuff, some of the new time stuff is a good mix. Because some of the youth now don't know about the old time stuff, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's good to kind of reintroduce a little bit more into the community.
I don't know nothing about, like I said, I don't know nothing about Tobago, and I enjoy, you know, the little I get so far.
I'm Crystal George for Let's Talk Tobago.
The Mariah Old Time Wedding attracts hundreds of spectators every year. And in true Tobago style, come let we go, because there's no other experience quite like this one. We're here at the Mariah Old Time Wedding 2023, and I have with me two visitors to our beautiful island of Tobago. This is Vintage and Naraya, and they are from Bermuda. I just want you to tell us, how have you been enjoying the Tobago Heritage Festival?
I feel that it's been very eye-opening and a great experience to experience how your culture is set up, and it's been very nice. Everybody has been welcoming and very inclusive.
One of the best trips I've taken so far. I just love it here. The music, the food, everything is just nice. The people are nice as well.
I mean, I saw you in the back dancing.
Yeah.
So we are here with Lyndon Lashley at the Mariah Old Time Wedding. We've reached down to the recreational ground where the wedding reception takes place. Now, he has been involved in this festival for over 5 years. Lyndon, what keeps you coming back?
Just the love of the arts. Just the love of the arts. We see in as heritage is something that needs a lot more young people in it. What other way to get more young people in than to have those who are just bridging that gap between the old and the young?
And you know, I must ask, how are you enjoying this year's festivities?
Ooh, boy, watch now. If Olia was not here, Olia miss out. If he wasn't here, you miss out.
They definitely missed out.
That alone says everything. If it wasn't here, you miss out.
Beside me is Assemblyman Area Representative for Mason Hall Mariah, Assemblyman Ian Pollard. Now, Mr. Pollard, you have spoken about monetizing the Mariah Old Time Wedding. Do you mind going into details for us at this time?
The Village Council of Mason Hall Mariah need to come together to have certain aspects of the Heritage Festival monetize it so that those persons from the cruise ship could come and visit here and get some aspect of the Heritage Festival on a 1 hour, 1.5 stop, because it's high time we start to monetize the business of the Heritage Festival.
And how have you enjoyed today's festivities?
It's been great. I'm glad to see that the young persons are intricately involved, and this is how we pass on our history.
How are you enjoying the festivities?
Beautiful. I've been to several of the shows, as many as I could, and I mean, I like it. I love it. The Mariah wedding is especially nice because I like the dances that they do and all the traditions coming on, and especially the fact that so many of the dancers, participants are so young. It is so good so that they can carry on the tradition.
Is it the first time Mason Hall New Edition folk performers are part of the production?
Yes, because Mason Hall New Edition used to be just dancers, but now they asked me to come and be the artistic director. So I do the music and movement. The group rarely belongs to, the leader is Mrs. Erlene Crooks Ned, and she invited me to be a part of this group.
Keep watching Let's Talk Tobago.
The Tobago Harvest Experience has been added to the Tobago Heritage Festival calendar 2023. We take you to the village right now.
This is Speyside. All are we and who all are we be. This is being Tobagonian. You know, this is what it's about. Sharing and having a society that cares for each other, and we just give. You know, even the strangers within our gates we give. So Tobago just keep being beautiful.
Nestled in the beautiful east side lies the village of Speyside. And for the first time, they incorporated their harvest into the Tobago Heritage Festival. And well, basically, it was all about giving thanks, then on to the eats and drinks.
The Speyside Harvest Festival is actually the only harvest festival that always occurred during the heritage period. And so we just decided this year, since it naturally occurs during the same period, that we should add it to the calendar. And it's really a celebration of Thanksgiving. It's an opportunity for the church and the community to come together and to give God thanks for all of the year's blessings. And so between last year, July, and now, God has been good to us.
It's a unique opportunity, it's something unique. I mean, I had experiences with friends from Trinidad and they find this harvest phenomenon out of this world because
put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Good morning, viewers, and welcome to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. As we continue to give God thanks for life, I am Julian Skeet.
And I am Adana Combi. Indeed, it is a good day to give God thanks and praise for being in the land of the living. And it is Tuesday morning, Julian, and we have a nice program for you guys today. How have you been? How was your evening yesterday? What's on your mind? What's up? What's happening?
Tuesday, the 22nd of August, Carl is on my mind.
I know.
The flight situation in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm sure it's naturally on the mind of many, bearing in mind the challenges faced, whether it's you directly, friends, family, etc., based on what has been the impact over the last few days, and that will certainly take focus in some of our discussions this morning.
That's right.
But before we head on into the rundown, we head over to news in 90 seconds.
The news in 90 seconds is brought to you by Flow, working for you on Tobago's newest fiber network.
Thank you, Julian and Adana. I am Biana Brebner, and here is your news in 90 seconds for Tuesday, 22nd August 2023. Chief Secretary Farley Augustine advocated for Caribbean Airlines to better manage the air bridge between the islands. He claimed that the Assembly have been pushing for the reappearance of the 24-hour daily flights. Additionally, he stated that we have not returned to the pre-COVID flight numbers, and when the Tobago House of Assembly brings up the subject to cabinet members, especially those who represent Tobago in the cabinet, they claim that it's not profitable for them to offer flights. He emphasized that Caribbean Airlines must make travel between Trinidad and Tobago a priority. Caribbean Airlines Limited issued a public statement extending sincere apologies for the recent disruption in flight operations. The disruptions were caused by high volumes of sick calls from pilots scheduled to operate over the period August 18 to August 20th, thus resulting in 60 flights being cancelled. In light of this, Caribbean Airlines obtained an injunction into the Industrial Court against Trinidad and Tobago Airline Pilots Association. Caribbean Airlines apologizes to all affected passengers and accepts that this is a significant setback in their relationship with you, the traveling public. And finally, Michel Liayi, the sprinting champion for Trinidad and Tobago, finished 5th overall yesterday in Budapest, Hungary's World 100-meter quarterfinals. Liayi finished in 11.18 seconds to become the lone TNT athlete to advance to the semifinals. Shelley-Ann Fraser-Price of Jamaica, the current champion and sprinting icon, won easily in 10.89 seconds. With a time of 10.98, American Tamaria Davis earned the second automatic qualifying spot. And that concludes your news in 90 seconds.
Tobago, after freeness is more speed and better TV. Get a free Samsung smartphone and free installation, plus 200 megabits per second, Paramount Plus, and more for only $299 with a select 200 plan from Flow. Visit online at discoverflow.co today.
Good morning and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show. We just had the news there in 90 seconds. And Adana, who are we looking forward to discussions this morning on our rundown?
Well, our primary conversation this morning, of course, as you mentioned earlier, we'll be speaking about the situation with Carl and the impact of tourism primarily on the island of Tobago and the way it affects, even domestic tourism and inter-island traveling. So we're speaking with Councillor Tashia Grace Boris as we discuss the impact of Carl on Tobago's tourism, and that is our main conversation for today.
All right, excellent. Viewers, at this point, we head straight on into Tobago in Focus.
Naturally, most persons think that gender
automatically refers to a male or female. However, the term can be used in many instances. The gender unit within the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection assists persons in vulnerable situations. Gender Officer Nigel Phillip explains the unit's responsibility in detail.
We address issues of gender-based violence. We address issues of matters that deal with students at schools. So we are in the schools, we are in different programs throughout Tobago, men's group. We address issues that affect both men and also issues that affect female.
For the gender unit to be effective, Philip states they need to have persons on the ground to assist. This currently consists of different NGO groups, religious-based organizations, agencies in Trinidad, and the Ministry of Gender Affairs. The unit also works with the United Nations.
So what we do in terms of we address issues of gender-based violence. So we provide support for persons who come into our office that is affected by gender-based violence. We also work very closely with the TTPS, the police services, the Victim and Support Unit. When cases of domestic violence or gender-based violence come to hand, they will refer the matter to us.
In addition to the unit's large portfolio, they give further intervention when needed. They provide support to NGOs by means of training in how to deal with violence and violent situations. They also provide support by means of funding for various programs.
Presently, right now, from 2020 to present right now, we have been working with the Spotlight Initiative. The Spotlight Initiative is a program designed to assist persons who in gender-based violence. So it educates them. We have different aspects of the program. And one of those aspects is that where we work with those NGOs. So the training that we will offer them is like training, like we had training in sexual violence and how to deal with sexual violence. We have training in, we would have done training in shelter management. And we would have tried to do training with key persons on the ground.
Key persons on the ground are inclusive of the judiciary, the police services, first responders, and medical services. These trainings also include support training and learning how to gauge persons when they come for support.
Welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. At this point, we head straight on into our birthday shout-outs today.
This is your birthday shout-outs on Tobago Updates, sponsored by KFC.
And we want to wish a very happy birthday to Michael Lewis, aka Mr. Dirtech 2023. Happy birthday to you, Michael. We hope that you have a great day today.
From the experts that created the Zinger sandwich comes the KFC Crispy Barbecue Zinger.
The only one I see is you.
Cheddar cheese, crispy onions, the most delicious Kentucky Fried Chicken, and barbecue sauce. Get ready for a whole new level of flavor.
Welcome back, viewers, this morning. And as we head on into our first segment here this morning, we have joining us online Secretary Tashia Grace Burris, Secretary with responsibility for the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation. Good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julian. Good morning, Adana. Good morning to Tobago and everybody who's listening to the show this morning. Thanks for having me today.
All right. So at this point, and we going straight on into the situation, we would have seen over the course of the weekend what some would describe most certainly as a disaster coming out of Cal, and more importantly, the extensive kind of impact happening for both travelers from Trinidad and from Tobago. I want to get in the first instance from your perspective, from where you sit on behalf of the Tobago House of Assembly. Immediate concerns raised with regards to the division and any areas of responsibility as far as the Tobago House of Assembly is concerned.
Well, I mean, I have to put on record that most definitely the Tobago House of Assembly is not to blame in what has happened over the weekend. The reality is that the Tobago House of Assembly has no responsibility for Caribbean Airlines. In fact, the Board of Caribbean Airlines is supposed to have a Tobago rep. As far as I'm aware, they do not have a Tobago rep. They do not have a representative from the Tobago House of Assembly. So we do not sit in a position where we are in the boardroom representing the interests of Tobago. From the THA perspective, as being one of the travelers who were affected personally, because I was supposed to be on a flight out to New York. I'm in New York currently, and my flight was delayed twice and then eventually cancelled. I was actually at ground zero at the airport and witnessed the scores of frustrated, angry travelers who were simply stuck. And although I think CAL may have tried their best to accommodate those who they could have accommodated in Port of Spain, I also understand that there were persons stuck in Tobago, and those persons were not given the level of customer service that our visitors and foreigners were afforded. And most definitely what that brings to the table is the fact that Tobago is nowhere on the agenda when it comes to how Caribbean Airlines and how central government by extension treats with the air bridge. Because in terms of their policy, if someone from Tobago travels and then is displaced like I was, I do not get first priority for example, to be put up in a hotel room. That priority goes to a foreigner or someone who is not a resident of Trinidad and Tobago. But if I live in Tobago, I'm not a resident of Trinidad either. So that you see that some of their policies are not Tobago friendly in the least. And this disaster, I would call it, has brought into sharp focus the fact that we have to, take the bull by the horns as a Tobago House of Assembly and begin to make certain demands of central government. Most definitely, I will echo the call of my Chief Secretary in asking for the immediate return of the number of flights that we used to have pre-COVID, because we see demand for the destination. We see domestic demand for the destination. And despite what happened and the Port Authority being able to step in and it being a reversal of the airbridge woes that we suffered some years ago, the sea bridge woes, that we suffered some years ago, where persons could not be accommodated on the sea bridge and had to be brought to Trinidad by plane. Now we have a reversal where persons could not be accommodated by the air bridge, have to now go by boat. And the reality is that the Tobago House of Assembly, there's very little that we can do in a situation like this. Certainly this brings the autonomy fight into stark focus, because if the Tobago House of Assembly is responsible for our civil aviation and responsible for our airfare, takes total responsibility of our airports. If you have a situation where you have one carrier who is doing the majority of the moving of our passengers out of the island to wherever their destinations are, it empowers the Tobago House of Assembly to now invite other carriers to come and operate in this space and create a competitive environment that ensures that persons have options, so that in a case where something happens with CAL, and anything can happen with CAL, from natural disaster to pilots getting sick, to aircraft breaking down. These are things that do happen when you're operating an airline. It gives the Tobago House of Assembly the power now to bring in charters so that we can move people. And that is one of the solutions that CAL implemented. They brought in charters to be able to move persons out. And we are still, treating with the fallout of what happened over the weekend. But the Tobago House of Assembly in and of itself is not empowered to do something like that. So it means then, therefore, that the conversation must be had, and more than the conversation to be had, there has to be a demonstration of will from the central government. I mean, this situation lies solely at the feet of the Minister of Works, the Minister of Finance, whose corporation sold, and the Prime Minister, who calls himself a Tobagonian. That once again in 2023 we have a situation where persons cannot depend on the reliability of the connection between two islands, and that is not good enough. The Tobago House of Assembly stands resolute in demanding that we have a resolution to this problem in the shortest period of time.
Right. You said a lot there, and you made a lot of sense. And what I'm trying to get also, you said that the conversation must be had, of course, or the THA must be empowered to have the conversation to bring in charters to alleviate some of these problems, because we're not going to deny that there is a problem. What is going to stimulate or engender that conversation to get that at least started and going somewhere?
Well, coming out of what has happened, we have taken a decision at the level of the THA to call an extraordinary town hall meeting of transportation and inter-island stakeholders. And this meeting would involve members of the hotel associations, members of the chamber, members from TTAL, members from all of the associations that are in the tourism sector and operate businesses in the tourism sector. Because one of the things that has to be reliable if you're talking about growing the tourism sector is the inter-island connectivity. We pay a lot of money for direct airlift out of the UK and out of the German market. And when you look at our proximity to a regional hub, which is Port of Spain, which is within an island that we share a unitary state with, it is almost impossible to think that in 2023 it is acceptable that we simply cannot travel 20 minutes to and from each other's destinations. When you look at how CAL has been increasing their flights to other destinations, increasing their services to St. Martin, starting a new service to St. Kitts, increasing flights when there are major events throughout the region, but they are continuing to give excuses as to why they cannot bring back the number of flights that we had pre-COVID. The excuses are no longer acceptable. This is simply unacceptable. And we have to take it to the place where people have to understand from the level of the Tobago House of Assembly, we put on the table very early extending the hours of the airport. We put on the table very early even the possibility of us paying for additional flights, which we should not be, because CAL is funded by the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, not the taxpayers of Trinidad alone, but the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. And it cannot be that the taxpayers of Tobago are suffering because the service simply is not up to standard when it comes to Tobago. And even when they were making attempts to try and resolve the situation, the focus really was not on trying to get back domestic services in Tobago. It is easy to simply tell people, okay, go on the boat, you will get to. But there are some people who literally cannot travel on boats. There are some people who, for reasons, they have to fly, they have to get into Trinidad quickly, they want to do their business quickly, they want to get out. The air bridge is not for leisure for most Tobagonians. Yes, we do enjoy what the connectivity offers us in terms of coming to Trinidad and enjoying what Trinidad has to offer. But the reality is that the average Tobagonian utilizes the air bridge and the sea bridge to do a number of transactions, whether they be educational transactions, financial transactions, medical transactions. They access goods and services that they don't have access to in Tobago, in Trinidad. And I mean, as Secretary of Tourism, I have had my own personal challenges, even traveling for work. You know, for this July-August period, I've not been able to travel standby on most occasions that I've been in Trinidad. I simply have to show up at the airport and ask to be accommodated, and my office allows me that opportunity. But what about the person who simply cannot go to the counter and get accommodated? What about the person who spends hours on standby at the airport or hours on standby at the port, because the ports are very heavily subscribed during the July-August period? What about the persons who depend on that connectivity to do business transactions, and they simply want to get into Trinidad quickly, do their business and get out? They are not able to book a same-day return. They cannot go down in the morning, they cannot go in the afternoon. So it has to be more than a conversation. Certainly, we will extend an invitation to the two members of Parliament from central government so that they are present and able to hear directly the woes of the persons who have been suffering with these challenges for a number of years. And this is not a new incarnation of the problem. This problem has been going on for a number of years. But it is time that we simply fix it. It is time that we simply solve the problem, so that coming out of that extraordinary town hall meeting, we would want to make a list of demands. And I have to say demands because it's a very strong word, but the reality is that the Tobago House of Assembly demands certain things from the central government on behalf of the people that we represent and the people that we serve. And it is not anything that is impossible. It's just that the government has demonstrated a supreme lack of will in terms of dealing with this problem. And now that this has become into sharp focus, this has caused a serious embarrassment to the destination, both Trinidad and Tobago. It has made a serious dent in the minds of our travelers in terms of whether or not they would want to come back to Tobago to experience what they experienced. And in terms of fixing it, it's not just making amends to the customers who are affected, but making amends to the people of Tobago and ensuring that situations like this never happen again.
we've seen the situation where we have speaking out on the matter thus far. We've heard from the head of the Tobago Business Chamber expressing severe concerns. Martin George, is the hope collectively now that we will be looking towards a number of other stakeholders, because you've seen some persons on social media, based on what are their personal experiences, really crying out in terms of certainly a challenge. Is the hope collectively that we ought to get to the point where enough voices are beginning to raise the concern on a greater level, so that we don't simply go in a direction where some may describe the situation as simply being politicized, and then it becomes a banter between THA and central government, and there's no real solution? How do we do it differently this time around in terms of moving forward progressively?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize and accept that this is simply not just a Tobago House of Assembly problem. This is a Tobago problem, and it impacts all of us in many different ways. I mean, the tourism sector is just one. I mean, the wider business sector is largely impacted by the unreliability of this service. And when you're talking about inter-island connectivity and persons, average members of the public who have to do this. There was one lady who had to take a child to Jamaica to pick up studies at the university there. They were displaced, and they reached out to me for some assistance to see whether or not they'll be accommodated. And simple information wasn't even forthcoming from Caribbean Airlines, so that their customer service needs some serious work. You can't expect that people could make decisions on what they could do next if you're not able to even give them information, and you're not willing to give them information or guidance. And I am not interested in this being a back and forth and a political banter, because since my son was a toddler, and persons before me can say that we have been having this challenge perennially, and we have to get to the place where we have to decide that we want to fix it. And that's why I ended my last comment by saying there has to be the political will, because at the stroke of a pen, policies can change. At the stroke of a pen, systems could be put in place. At the stroke of a pen, architecture can be built to ensure that things run the way that they should. And also, you speak about the fact that a Tobago House of Assembly, this administration has been advocating and agitating from day one for us to return to our pre-COVID number of flights. And we have not heard anything positive in that direction from Caribbean Airlines. That also says something to us. And you think that, I mean, I'm not certain where this is coming from in terms of why there was a reluctance to do that. Why is there reluctance on the part of central government to give Tobago what Tobago is due and what Tobago deserves? But we cannot put that, or we cannot continue along that lines. So that I think it is important for the average man to be part of this extraordinary town hall, so that that person can now relay their concerns directly to the persons who sit in the room with the people who are responsible for Caribbean Airlines, and to be able to represent their interests truly, because now you're hearing from the man who is severely affected how this affects them, so that even if you do not have a reference point for what anyone goes through when they have to go and stand by for hours, you get the opportunity to sit in the room with these people, hear their concerns, hear them voice their concerns from a place of having gone through it, having seen people going through it, and for us all to understand that our job as representatives, our job as an administration, is to see how we can improve the lives of the people that we serve. And simply fixing the air bridge brings an immense improvement to the lives of the people that we serve. And we must be able to put aside whatever the differences are in opinion or in politics, and simply do what we must for the people of Tobago.
And you said something, it's time for us to stop with the back and forth on this, because we are all affected by this, right? And it's time for us to start taking actionable steps to ensure that this can be done. We're going to go to a brief break, and we'll come back speaking with you guys to Councillor Tashia Boris, who is the Secretary for Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. Stay with us, and we ask you guys to share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be back.
Are you flood ready? Monitor trusted sources for info. Wear protective gear when you clean up. Contact your insurance provider to assess the damage. An initiative to help people prevent, prepare, recover. TATIL, where people are people.
Coconut's Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, bull joil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meat served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules or if you are having a cooking day off.
If you see or know about a crime, report a crime safely and anonymously. Call 800-TIPS. Help stop crime. You can play your part safely and anonymously. Report a crime. Earn a reward. Call 800-TIPS. Help stop crime. Be a hero. Champion. Fearless citizen. Be a crime stopper safely and anonymously. Call 800-TIPS. Help stop crime.
Are you looking for a place for your loved ones? Heavenly Care welcomes you. Located at Northside Road opposite Massey Motors, we offer a variety of services. These include doctor visitations, social activities, geriatric care, and much more. Contact us at 277-9595 or visit us at Northside Road opposite Massey Motors. At Heavenly Care, compassion is at the heart of all care.
Put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning.
Good morning, viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. We're just at about 7:37 a.m. And this morning we have on line with us a secretary with responsibility for the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation, Councillor Tashia Grace Burris. And we started the conversation looking at particular aspects in relation to the broader perspective of CAL. In this segment, I want us to continue by looking at what one may broadly describe as systemic challenges. Some have indicated, this was beyond the control, and in fact, when one reads the press release coming out from CAL, Caribbean Airlines, you hear a number of references to what would have happened, several pilots calling in sick and so on, and ultimately because of the short notice with which they got those calls, it left them or almost made the situation impossible to recover. But we're taking a few steps back, and we are asking the very deliberate and obvious questions. When it comes to the management and operations of CAL, do we have a greater and a fundamental issue as it relates to the human resource capacity, how that is managed? Are staff satisfied in their day-to-day operations? The connection and its link by way of its line ministry and so on, and the greater responsibility being the resources of the state being pumped into CAL. Where are some of the fundamental issues existing from your perspective, Secretary?
Well, I believe it starts at the top. To be honest with you, I'm not interested in CAL's business model in general, because they always like to make the argument that the domestic air bridge is not profitable for them. And we see that in how the domestic air bridge is treated. But the reality is that the domestic air bridge is part of our public transportation architecture, so that CAL cannot be making a business argument as to whether or not they need to fly to Tobago or want to fly to Tobago, because it is not profitable for them. They increased the fares to Tobago on the domestic air bridge this fiscal year, and we have not seen an improvement in service in that score. I mean, this particular incident has proven that even if you increase the price of the ticket, the service has not improved, and especially with how they treat our local passengers, our domestic passengers. In addition to that, when you look at what is happening with CAL at the level of their management and at the level of the the company itself. The central government has to take a position that says that they will have to take control, I think more serious control of what is happening at CAL, because what you probably are seeing now is a breakdown of communication at the level of the management and at the level of the staff. I have been hearing a number of rumors on the ground in terms of rumblings with respect to employment status of employees and that kind of thing. And that does not augur well for us, because Caribbean Airline moves the majority of our passengers out of Tobago. And that is the singular carrier that does that. So if CAL has a challenge for some reason, then you have a situation where Tobago is cut off from the rest of the world, cut off from Trinidad, cut off from the rest of the region. And save and except for those flights out of the UK and out of the German market, Caribbean Airlines is our bridge to the rest of the world. We cannot have a situation in Tobago where you have one carrier solely responsible for moving the majority of the persons in and out of your destination. That is a situation that is untenable. And this has brought into sharp focus the reality that we need to have the liberalization of our aviation sector. We need to be in a position where we can invite other carriers into the space, that we have the latitude to invite other carriers in the space, to know that they would be supported in terms of when they apply for their licenses to fly, because the CARICOM Air Services Agreement allows that. It allows regional carriers who operate in the space of CARICOM to go into domestic airspaces and operate their services. And I don't know what is taking us so long to be able to implement some of these measures, because it will only redound to the benefit of Tobago. It will only redound to the benefit of Trinidad. It will only redound to the benefit of the region if we have greater connectivity within the region. In 2023, Tobago cannot continue to wait on a central government, wait on a Caribbean Airlines, wait on a civil aviation to decide when we can have additional carriers in the space. And I mean, as far as I'm aware, if CAL is the problem, they can't be the solution for us. So CAL has to fix their internal issues, and we hope that they are resolved amicably and in the shortest possible time. But aside from that, the Tobago House of Assembly has to look for other options. And in looking for those other options, we also have to be supported by the agencies who have their work to do to ensure that we, the Tobago House of Assembly, and the people of Tobago have these other options outside of Caribbean Airlines.
Mention that because it takes me to one of the other areas. We have seen what happened with Liat as a regional carrier. Is it that we have to get to extreme points in Trinidad and Tobago to recognize that there is a need to make fundamental changes as it relates to Caribbean Airlines?
I would hope not, because, I mean, Caribbean Airlines is our national airline, and they have a responsibility to Trinidad and Tobago first and everybody else after. And yes, they have a greater responsibility to ensure that there's connectivity within the region. But if Caribbean Airlines simply cannot fix what is happening in its domestic space, then how could they make an argument for expansion throughout the region? And they have to fix the problem, the challenge that we have in Trinidad and Tobago in ensuring that persons can move seamlessly from one island to the next. And once they solve that problem, most definitely we would support them going into other islands and expanding their network and all of these things, because we know that at home we are okay. You need to fix home first. The old people say that you have to dance at home before you dance abroad, and Caribbean Airlines have to dance at home first, because we, the people of Tobago, as I said, are taxpayers as well. We contribute to Caribbean Airlines, and it cannot be that there's one law for Tobago and one law for Trinidad. And I would not like to see Caribbean Airlines fail. Of course not. Nobody wants to see Caribbean Airlines fail. But responsibility has to lie at the feet of the people who have the power to make the changes. It has to lie at the feet of the Minister of Finance. It lies at the feet of a Tobagonian Prime Minister who knows of what we have been suffering for a number of years. And if they lack the political will, or if they have lacked the political will in the past, they have to find that will now, because excuses will no longer fly. People are no longer accepting of the excuses that have been put on the table. The Tobago House of Assembly, even in the midst of all that has been happening or was happening over the weekend, we still try to see where we can come in and bring some relief. So, for example, while I was out there assistant secretary through the administrator arranged for transportation to be provided to persons who were at the airport and needed to get to the port. And I must publicly commend the assistant secretary and the administrator and the driver who came out over the weekend to transport these people. And he ended up transporting the majority of persons from the airport to the seaport. This was not an arrangement that was put in place by Caribbean Airlines. This was an intervention that was done by the Tobago House of Assembly, because we also recognize that even though people are having a bad experience, that we should try our best to see if we can soften that bad experience. And I think that even providing a lift to the seaport for persons to get access to the boat in some way left a good taste in the mouths of persons who may have had a bad experience, who came to have their vacations and just simply wanted to get home. So that in small ways, in small ways, we, the Tobago House of Assembly, will always try to make sure that we preserve relationships with our travelers, preserve relationships with our visitors. But we are very limited in what we can do. And the people who sit in the boardrooms at CAL, the people who CAL answers to at the level of central government, have to understand that this is not a Tobago House of Assembly issue. This is not a political issue. This is a people issue. This is a Tobago issue, and they have to demand that CAL fixes their problems at home first before they look to do anything else.
You, Secretary Boris. Of course, again, we have to go to a brief break, but we continue this conversation because, of course, it's a pertinent and relevant conversation as it affects all of us here in Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, but primarily in the Tobago space. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a brief break. And of course, we ask you to stay with us and also to share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be back.
Inner Health, number 13B, Portmore, Scarborough, Tobago. With over 25 years experience offering services in and not limited to microscopic blood analysis, reflexology, and the sale of a wide range of organic herbal products used to supplement thyroid, lymphatic, heart, kidney, and brain health, and the male and female reproductive systems. Come and chat with us. Remember, your health is your wealth.
Right now, Tobagonians are just scurrying down to Bonaccord, right in Stobie Local Road. You know why? To come down and shop at Authentic Builders General Hardware, the only hardware store in Tobago that is giving you guys Trinidad prices. So for instance, such as steel, half-inch and 5/8, $7,895. 5/8 construction ply for $260. Every single thing that you will need to do your home renovation or start your new construction, we have it right here. And to get your quotation, it's very easy. Just WhatsApp us at 272-1990 and we will do your free WhatsApp quotation for you.
Waiting for CXC results and wondering what's next? Or maybe you're looking to switch careers. Learn a skill to jumpstart your career at the NESC Technical Institute. Get qualified for jobs in the energy and industrial sectors, or even start your own business. Choose from automotive, electrical, instrumentation, drilling, welding, fabrication, AC refrigeration, IT networking, and more. NESC diplomas are gate approved. Classes begin in September. Visit nesc.edu.tt to apply.
You can now get whatever you need whenever you need it anywhere in Tobago with Tobago. Your meals, medication, groceries, and shopping all delivered directly to you. No more hassle, no more stress. Get the Tobago app today on Google Play or Apple App Store.
That's TAPPOGO and let us deliver to you.
Check our website at www.tapogo.app or call the experts at 494-TOGO and 484-4746. Tobago. Relax. We will get it to you. Tobago's at your service.
Put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning.
Welcome back to the morning show on Tobago Updates. I am Adana Kambi, and of course we continue our conversation with Councillor Tashia Boris, who is the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. We speak, of course, about the impact of our tourism product as it relates to our inter-island travel, primarily with CAL. We continue our conversation. Secretary Boris, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Right. I remember you said earlier in the conversation that there is no representative on the CAL board, right? We've been having conversations. I feel as if we've been speaking about this issue for eons and we've not been making any progress. And you've mentioned a lot of ideas in terms of having a town hall meeting, bringing all the stakeholders together, changing policy and all these types of things. But what we want to know, especially as a person in Tobago who is affected, right, who is affected by the situation at hand. I mean, this recent situation is only the recent one, but it's not the first. It has been happening time and time and time again. What we want to know is what is next. How do we penetrate the space where the decision makers sit? How do we penetrate that space? How do we get them to take actionable steps to change the policy, as you said, by the stroke of a pen? How do we get to implement things that will bring change and alleviate the problem? Because what we need is answers to the problems. How do we move forward?
Collectively, all of the voices that have been affected have to weigh in on this matter. Again, it cannot just be a Tobago House of Assembly approaching the central government, because I think that there is always an opportunity to politicize an issue and make it about one party versus another, and this cannot be the way that we approach what is happening right now. The average person in Tobago is a voter. The average person in Tobago is a taxpayer. And those two things are important because they deserve an opportunity to state how this affects them, how this affects their business, how this affects their daily lives. And even if someone is not willing to speak to a Tobago House of Assembly or not willing to even respect the office of a Tobago House of Assembly office holder, the average people of Tobago have to know that their views and their rights are being respected. Also, what we have to do as a Tobago House of Assembly is not just lobby, but literally find the mechanisms within the law that we can take responsibility for all of the matters under the fifth schedule that we have responsibility for. The fifth schedule gives us responsibility for airports and seaports. So that if it gives us responsibility for airports and seaports, we now have to interrogate what those responsibilities are. What is the latitude that we have? What is the legal standing that we have in terms of being able to intervene based on what the law gives us power to intervene in? Because we may very well realize that we are supposed to get more than what we've been given over the number of years. It may mean that instead of having one seat on a CAL board, that we are responsible for 2 or 3, or we are supposed to have 2 or 3. Because when you look at how Trinidad, the makeup of Trinidad and Tobago, we talk about side by side, we stand. But when you have a board of 7 members and 1 member is from Tobago, even if that person is screaming to the top of their lungs and supporting Tobago and advocating for Tobago and defending Tobago, you have 6 other board members in that room who could shoot down any suggestion that that person makes. So it cannot just be left up to a one person on a seat on a board at Caribbean Airlines to be able to make that decision. It means that the offices of the chief secretary and the secretary have to be engaged by the offices of the corporation, so in this case, Minister of Finance, the Minister of Works, and even at the level of the Prime Minister, speaking to the Chief Secretary and making sure that the relationship is such that we have collectively decided that this is an issue, that we have to find a solution to the issue, that we owe it to the people of both Trinidad and Tobago to solve this issue. The Tobago House of Assembly is willing to come to the table with all of those offices to solve the issue, because that has to be the short-term solution. The longer-term solution is to continue to advocate for our autonomy. And these incidents like these bring into focus what autonomy means. That if Tobago has responsibility for the aspects of civil aviation that are relative to the Tobago space, then that civil aviation authority could now invite airlines to come in, and they can now be offered the opportunity to operate domestic services within the Tobago space, and the Tobago House of Assembly would have responsibility for that. If we take up responsibility for airport, we will have our own airports authority that answers to the Tobago House of Assembly, and we would be responsible for determining how the airport operates and what we can do optimally to ensure that it serves the needs of the people that we are trying to serve. That if responsible for our port authority, that Tobago has responsibility for our port authority, then we could now design the systems there to ensure that the operations benefit the people of Tobago. And all of these things are the things that we as Tobagonians have to understand, that, autonomy is not just a word in a dictionary that people throw around an election time. It affects our everyday living, and it affects us in ways that we only see when disaster happens. It shows us what we don't have the ability to do, what we are limited in terms of our response could be in a situation. And this is not a comfortable position to be in at all. I mean, we look at the fact that we have had month on for the entire year growth in our domestic arrival figures, growth in our international arrival figures. So we were on a path of growth this year. And it was exciting to see, coming out of COVID, the increased demand for the destination. And now that we have a situation like this that we are grappling with, that we are dealing with, it means that it throws everything else into chaos for the rest of the year. We have a Tobago Carnival that is coming up in October that planning has been going on feverishly behind the scenes for. And I have persons in the diaspora in New York who are telling me that they cannot book anything past mid-October on Caribbean Airlines to travel directly to Tobago. And if the government says that they want to support the growth of the tourism sector, then you cannot tell me that you're not fixing the challenges with CAL if CAL is the carrier that is moving the majority of our persons in and out of the destination. Then it means that you're not serious about fixing the tourism sector. It means that you're paying lip service to the people who make this their daily living, because this affects down to the average man, the man who is doing reef tours in Buku Reef, the man who is selling craft on the side of the road, the persons in the hotels who depend on high occupancy levels to get their salaries on time, get their tips. This affects every single person who is part of that tourism value chain. And when we see that we have a challenge and we simply do not want to fix the problem because we tell ourselves, oh, it's Tobago, we will survive subvention from central government, that is not good enough, because we don't intend to just survive off of a subvention on central government. We want to grow our tourism sector. We want to be a net contributor of foreign exchange to the economy. And if we have an airline that belongs to us, that we simply do not want to fix the challenges in that airline so that we could collectively grow our tourism sector, then I don't want to hear anybody talk about tourism anymore, because clearly we're paying lip service to the thing. It means that we don't even care to have that situation sorted so that persons who want to come from Trinidad, because Trinidad is our largest, closest source market of 1.4 million potential customers who can get access to this destination in as short as 20 minutes and as long as 3 to 4 hours by boat. And if they want to come to the destination, if they want to come and enjoy the destination, spend money in the destination, we must ensure that those people get seamless access to the island. And on the flip side, which is equally important, we must ensure that the people of Tobago who have to access Trinidad for all other reasons outside of leisure also have the opportunity to do so seamlessly. So that I want people to understand that, again, this is not a Tobago House of Assembly issue. This is a Tobago issue. And we need to put our collective will behind it. We have to make demands of the persons in central government, our 2 members of parliament who so far have been silent on this issue. We need to demand that they take a stand on behalf of the people that they represent in Tobago, speak to their fellow colleagues in cabinet, speak to the Minister of Finance, speak to the Prime Minister himself, who is a Tobagonian. The acting president of the country right now is a Tobagonian. So you have the highest offices of the land being held by Tobagonians at this time, and it cannot be that they themselves are not aggrieved by what is taking place. And aside from being aggrieved, it has to be more than just being aggrieved. The situation has gone on for far too long, and collectively we can solve it, and we just simply have to do that.
A wrap, just reminder of if you can remind us about the date and the information specific to this town hall meeting, which is one of the immediate in terms of seeking to bring together the stakeholders.
Yes, so we're proposing to have this extraordinary town hall meeting of inter-island stakeholders and transportation stakeholders on the island and tourism stakeholders on the island who are affected by the inter-island transportation situation. We want to have that town hall on Tuesday, 29th of August at 9 a.m. at the Mount Irving Bay Hotel. I must commend the president of the Hotel Association, Mr. Alpha Lord, who has offered the facility for us to hold this extraordinary meeting, because coming out of this interaction, we certainly want to lay at the feet of central government a number of demand points in terms of what is required to fix the challenge in Tobago. And this is not just coming from a Tobago House of Assembly, but it's coming from all of the stakeholders who continue to be affected by these situations. So that is Tuesday, 29th August at 9 a.m. Mount Irving Bay Hotel. This is an open invitation to anyone who operates in the sector to come out and have your voices heard, and even members of the public who have been adversely affected by the events of the last few days. You can come and share your stories and share your recommendations, because it's not just about cussing Cal or cussing the THA or cussing the representatives or cussing central government. The time for that has passed. Time now is for solutions and action. So as fast as we want to hear what people have been going through and have gone through, we also want people to come with their recommendations for solutions to the challenges. Because I think that collectively solutions can be found. This is a time to put aside any political differences persons may have. This is the time for us to speak about solutions. This is the time for us to advocate for the will of the parliament, the will of the members of the parliament who have responsibility for Caribbean Airlines, to fix the challenges within Caribbean Airlines so that they can provide this service, a mandatory public transportation service at that. That is the inter-island air bridge between Tobago and Trinidad. So once again, for all persons who are interested in being part of this exercise, it's going to be taking place on Tuesday, 29th August at 9 a.m. at the Mount Irving Bay Hotel.
All right, and just a reminder, Secretary, we want to ensure that this is not just CAL, but looking broadly at both Caribbean Airlines and the Port Authority. Because just when the Port Authority starts saving us, we know there's going to be an announcement that says the boats have to go on routine maintenance and so on. So we are looking forward to the discussion circling not just CAL, but also Port Authority, connecting Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much again, Councillor Tashia Grace Boris, Secretary with responsibility for the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. And certainly we got to have a follow-up interview to even speak about involvements and happenings out there with regards to Tobago Days and those links and connections being made in New York on behalf of the Tobago House of Assembly. So we look forward to those continued discussions. All right, viewers, thank you so much for choosing the Tobago Updates morning show. It's certainly been a morning looking at a very real issue affecting us far and wide here in Tobago. And I think, Adana, it's safe to say this becomes one of those Tobago-focused issues, and I'm really, really hopeful that it does not become a political back and forth.
I know, I'm tired of it.
But there is some fundamental focus on how are we going to find the solutions,
how are we moving forward,
correct, in order to move us forward. So we got to leave it there for this morning. We want to thank each and every one of you for connecting with us here at the Tobago Updates, a morning show. And at this point, we prepare to head straight on over to Tobago Notes, followed by GMT, Good Morning Tobago. So for now, we say bye-bye, and remember to share the live, share the live, share the live.
Footprints to Freedom, the theme under which Tobagonians commemorated this year's Emancipation Day celebrations. It's a remembrance of the liberation granted to enslaved Africans throughout the British Empire in 1838. It also marks the many struggles and myriad achievements of African ancestors and their descendants. Following the procession from Crown Point to Store Bay, patrons enjoyed a vibrant cultural show at the Store Bay Beach facility. The distribution of awards was another high point during the Emancipation Day celebrations. Winners in the various Tobago Heritage Festival competitions were awarded for their top performances. Just over 20 cultural stalwarts were honored for their decades of contribution to the growth and sustenance of the island's many cultural art forms.
Don't send me flowers when I die, but give me my flowers now. And it's good that, you can recognize and pay homage to the living human treasures while they are around and kicking. And I think I speak on behalf of all the other awardees, the pride and honor they feel, as well as the humility of being honored by the THA.
I feel elated in receiving this award because over the past 20 years, I've been doing a lot of cultural costumes, spiritual clothes. I did for as far as Malik folk performers, a lot of other dance groups within Trinidad and Tobago, and I just feel honored in receiving this plaque today.
This award is a special one. At least I've received a lot of awards before, but this one is special because my mother passed away about 2 days ago, and this one, I received this one in memory of she.
The Emancipation Day celebrations concluded this year's Tobago Heritage Festival activities, which was themed All Are We and All Are Who Are We Be.
That was a production of the Department of Information, Office of the Chief Secretary, Tobago House of Assembly.
Welcome to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates, your source for current affairs in Tobago, Trinidad, and the region. With the perfect conversations to complement your morning routine, I am Candace Jackson, and let's get started with the news in 90 seconds.
The news in 90 seconds is brought to you by Flow, working for you on Tobago's newest fiber network.
Chief Secretary Fali Augustine has called for improved management of the air bridge between the islands by Caribbean Airlines. He asserted that the Assembly has been advocating for the reinstatement of 24 daily flights. Moreover, he pointed out that pre-COVID flight levels have not been regained. When the Tobago House of Assembly raises a matter with cabinet members, particularly those representing Tobago, they assert that providing flights is not financially viable. Augustine stressed the need for Caribbean Airlines to prioritize seamless travel between Trinidad and Tobago. Meanwhile, Caribbean Airlines Limited has released a public statement offering heartfelt apologies for the recent flight operation disruptions. These disruptions stem from a substantial number of sick calls made by pilots who were slated to fly between August 18th and August 20th. Consequently, a total of 60 flights had to be cancelled. In response, Caribbean Airlines secured an injunction from the Industrial Court against the Trinidad and Tobago Airline Pilots Association. The airline extends its regrets to all passengers affected by the situation and acknowledges that it marks a notable setback in the relationship with the traveling public. And finally, Energy Minister Stuart Young has criticized Caribbean Airlines pilots for causing the mass disruptions, leaving many passengers stranded. Young, speaking at the Cascade Community Center's opening ceremony, expressed concern over the shutdown of the national airline due to a handful of what he calls entitled individuals. 60 flights were cancelled after 75 pilots claimed sickness last weekend. CAL has obtained an injunction against the reoccurrence. Young emphasized responsible resource allocation, highlighting the diverse needs of society, especially amid limited funds. Urging against entitlement, he underscored the importance of gratitude and prioritizing those truly in need of assistance. And that was the news in 90 seconds.
Tobago, after freeness is more speed and better TV. Get a free Samsung smartphone and free installation, plus 200 megabits per second, Paramount Plus, and more for only $299 with a select 200 plan from Flow. Visit online at discoverflow.co today.
All right, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. Yes, viewers, so, over the last couple of days, we were very consumed in the media space with what's been happening with Caribbean Airlines, because of course it's part of our lifeline, if you want to say it as that, to Trinidad, because of how much we depend on Trinidad for so many things. But we're putting a pause on that conversation just a little bit, and we're going to be talking about some things that are happening within the space, especially politically. And joining us right now, we have economist Dr. Vanus James on with us. Good morning and welcome to you, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Candice. How are you?
I am great. So on a couple of weeks ago, or last week I should say, last week Sunday, we had the launch of the TPP, the Tobago People's Party. Just on the onset, what are your opinions about the launch of the party, the formation, moving from independence and before from PDP members to now TPP?
Well, when you're evaluating political organizations of any kind, new or old, you have to look at what they stand for, and what their record is the most basic way in which you make that evaluation. So if you ask me, the issue that I would put on the table is, let's go back and look at the record. Much of this, minus Watson Duke, is the PDP in new clothing, so to say. And you can evaluate what the public thinks about the Watson half of the PDP by what happened in the local government elections in Trinidad. Yeah? And I think if you look at the record in Tobago, the dismal performance you saw down there is very likely to be repeated here by this half, unless some sort of miracle occurs in the political space between now and the next election.
Mm-hmm. So we're seeing that, Watson Duke is basically saying that Fally Augustine, Chief Secretary Fally Augustine and the rest of them hijacked the party. And the new formation of the TPP is the same faces. So, but you're saying that without Watson Duke, they're not going to make the same impact that they made in 2021.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the public's evaluation of Watson Duke's half of the party is clear from his dismal failure in the local government elections in Trinidad. Because what people do in politics, normal citizens, is they evaluate you on your performance. And if you destroyed the PDP that you took to the people and made these grand offers of fundamentally important change, and you didn't keep them, you didn't keep the party together, the people would punish you. That's what happened to Watson in Trinidad. Now you have to ask what would happen to the other half of the party. This TPP is just the other half of the PDP. And you have to look at their record, right? The same way. First of all, in political terms, you have to look at what happened within the PDP, why you ended up with this split and this breakup. And if the public holds them responsible for some of that, they'll pay the price in the next election. Should the public hold them responsible? Fundamentally, the answer is yes, of course. You can't just hold Watson alone responsible. You have to pay attention to the fact that they were part of the promise to the people of Tobago to do some fundamental things, and they had the power in their hands to do those things. The most important of those is the pursuit of autonomy. Between December 2021 and now, nothing has been done on that. Tied to autonomy is the central question of the inclusion of the people of Tobago in the governance process. That is the key to institutional progress that would drive economic development in Tobago. In the absence of that, you can't have any economic development. We have ample evidence of that around the world.
Yes.
So, after they broke with Watson, they had the power in their hands. They didn't do it before April. After April, essentially the breakup came. And after April, they were in power and had the opportunity to put in place for the people to see how you would keep the promise of empowerment. Between then and now, nothing has been done on that. And the the team became notorious for shutting off their phones and nobody can get access to them. So the public will not forget those things and they will be evaluated on that for their political performance. So up to now, no movement has been made to deal with the issue of autonomy. And a lot of that has to do with all of this airline stuff, you know. The absence of an appropriate approach to the dialogue with Port of Spain that would allow us to shape and influence and lead the way policy is formed with respect to Tobago down there. The absence of that kind of leadership is at the heart of why we can't have a real conversation with Caribbean Airlines about how to fix the service. Now, if you don't prosecute autonomy on that kind of front, leading Trinidad, leading the government down there, that's Tobago's responsibility. If you look at what has been done, the people would see and they will hold you responsible because they will notice, for example, in the last budget, the THA fairly allocated $6 million to pursue autonomy. But the morning after that, he declared war on Rowley. Now, once you declare war on Rowley, that's a wasted $6 million. That's the end of any talk about autonomy.
And I want to stick a pin right there with that declaration of war because that was the messaging that came very clearly from the launch last Sunday.
Absolutely.
That it's a war now between, well, Tobago and the central government.
So that means that as long as Rowley is Prime Minister, you're not going to get any autonomy. Let me remind the public of how you will win autonomy from Port of Spain. You can't simply pursue the old Robinsonian agenda, right? What you have to do is now say, we've gone as far as we can with the agenda of internal self-government. What we need now is an agenda to provide the THA with lawmaking capacity, the primary reason for which would be to control and manage the operations of the Executive Council. In other words, you will need a type of THA that could make law to restrict and restrain and instruct the behavior of the Executive Council, evaluate it, and so on. That's the essence of autonomy. So it's not a break with Trinidad. It's a reorganization of the THA with the power in the THA to make law, to encase policy. Now, the public will understand that because people like myself will participate in that conversation.
Very thoroughly.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And when the public understands that that is really what we're talking about when we talk about autonomy, and they look at the war, they will see you have no chance of moving that agenda forward because you don't have anybody to talk to in Trinidad. You're not talking to the PNM. You're not talking to Rowley. Rowley even say he ain't even want to talk to Farley unless he had 3-4 people in the meeting because he can't trust Farley. When you have that breakdown, let me remind the public of something. The way we got the Dispute Resolution Commission to work is that we went to Pandy and offered him leadership. We didn't go begging. We went as competent professionals and we laid out why you have to trigger this thing, how it has to work, and we even had a deal with Pandy that at the end of the dispute resolution case, if we win, we would move immediately to constitutional reform to deal with these issues that we're talking about today. So you have to lead the government in Trinidad. Declaring war amounts to saying, well, okay, we're going to secede because we can't get it through you. And God bless you if that's your agenda for Tobago. Tobagonians are much smarter than that because they know that we can only fund about 20%, and under this government, now 18% of our government's needs, to say nothing of the economy's needs. So you could leave this secession agenda to one side, and you have to deal with the tough task of offering competent leadership to Port of Spain to prosecute the national development agenda by empowering Tobago to do the things we need to do to fix our economy here.
Now, what does that competent leadership look like? And do you see any elements of it within this present administration?
That's what I'm saying to you. That, well, we have another half of the record I will tell you about in a minute.
Okay.
But the competent leadership goes to one critical fact. If you look at the THA Act, what it really amounts to is an assignment to the people of Tobago full responsibility to manage our economy. The fifth schedule is essentially the description of the economy of Tobago. And the 25(1) of the THA Act says you could make policy in order to deal with that economic story. Now, if you look at the Local Government Act that was just passed in the Parliament, you would see very clearly that is a big difference between local government in Trinidad and in Tobago. The local government bodies in Trinidad are required by the law to follow the policies of the government in Port of Spain. 25(1) of the THA Act says you make policy. If the central government has a policy and your policy conflict with it, we go have to sort that out. But fundamentally, you have the right to make policy and implement it to sort out your fifth schedule responsibilities. Now, Hocho Charles continually explains to Tobagonians that you can't make policy that is not encased in law. So what you have to do to pursue the matter of autonomy is lead the government in Trinidad to understand that if we want to develop the economy of Tobago and bring Tobago to play a rightful place, an appropriate place, an adequate place in the development of the country, we need the room in the law to make law relevant to the fifth schedule activities in order to encase policy. And encasing policy just means here are the parameters for the executive council to follow. You can't just make law. You make law within the framework the THA sets, legal framework we set. So you could say only this far your policies could go. The law will restrict you in that sense.
All right.
So
Well,
you follow what I'm saying?
yes,
Good.
certainly. And we're going to get more into that conversation when we come back after the break. So viewers, please don't go anywhere.
Waiting for CXC results and wondering what's next? Or maybe you're looking to switch careers. Learn a skill to jumpstart your career at the NESC Technical Institute. Get qualified for jobs in the energy and industrial sectors, or even start your own business. Choose from automotive, electrical, instrumentation, drilling, welding, fabrication, AC refrigeration, IT networking, and more. NESC diplomas are gate approved. Classes begin in September. Visit nesc.edu.tt to apply.
This is how it's gonna go. They better look up below, 'cause this is your show, and everybody's gonna know. Say it to them once again. They better look up below. This is your show, and everybody's gonna know. That's how it's gonna go. They better look up below, 'cause this is your show.
Are you flood ready? Review and update insurance coverage. Install floodgates and barriers. Create a family flood plan. An initiative to help people prevent, prepare, recover. TATIL, where people are people.
back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are continuing our conversation this morning with economist Dr. Vanesh James. Now, before we went to the break, we were speaking a little bit about how should we treat with autonomy, because there's a whole lot of issues within this space that have raised the question quite a lot, right? I mean, we have more of the population, it seems, talking about the need for autonomy and so on. And Dr. James is saying that it has to be within the construct of a law versus what we're seeing or hearing
the
from...
power to make law.
Yes.
That's the central
Instead
issue.
of the declaration of war stance that
Exactly.
we're hearing from the TPP leaders and the Chief Secretary and the team. Now, could you elaborate a little bit on how that should look within...
How do you lead government in Trinidad?
Yes.
So what you have to do, and what we promised the people of Tobago would be done, is you would immediately set up your operations in Tobago according to the law. Now, the THA Act provides you room by saying, take all such steps as are required to do your job. So you could set up the inclusion arrangements, including arrangements to include Trinidadians in the conversation, include the central government in the conversation, and so on. You could set up the arrangements so that you could signal to Trinidadians and to the government in Trinidad what your intention is. And then you say, this is how we really want to do it, but we don't have enough room in the law. So we need autonomy. We need us to change the law so that we could have the power to make this signal into the structure that we are calling THA, good governance, inclusive governance, and so on. Between January and now, Fali's government has essentially refused to reorganize the THA in a way to set up the operations to show how you would bring the people of Tobago in. And what the government has been doing is going around and holding what they're calling town hall meetings, but that is nowhere near what you need if you're going to reorganize. You can't reorganize the THA around town hall meetings. You have to reorganize the THA's work around appropriate oversight committees. And even if you can't set them up with the power of oversight that is required in full law, you do whatever you can up front, and you say to Rowley, look, you see how we're going about it? This is what you need. This is what you even need in Trinidad. But we need power in law to do this fully inside the THA. My recommendation to them was set up the advisory committees, which would essentially become the oversight committees of a well-organized THA. They haven't done that. Tobagonians will remember that in the entire campaign to take the government, that was the essential promise. And you don't keep it after 2 years, nothing you say about forming party will signal to them you're doing that. What people will say, and what people are saying to me already, is these guys are just looking after themselves. They're not looking after us. Now, once people make the judgment that that's what you're about, you will get the Watson treatment from the local government elections. So that's the first half. But a much more important thing that must stay at the top of mind of the team that has set up this party is that people will think governance in a very broad way, but they will feel the economy in their pockets. And they know that the law gives you responsibility to manage the economy. And they look at your record. And if you look at the record of this team last year and up to now, inclusive, remember, people will hold you accountable, inclusive of any collapse, any further collapse that takes place here in 2023. 2022 was a massive collapse of the Tobago economy. Even the THA experienced a 7% decline in output. When you're talking about output decline, you're not talking about money spent. You're talking about you're growing planting. Last year you produced 1 planting, this year you produced 2. That's what we're
So
talking
in other
about.
words, productivity
Real
dropped.
output. Yeah, productivity goes up or something like that. That causes it. Last year, 2022, after the PNM that we removed had pushed the economy out of COVID from $1.61 billion of output to $1.68 billion worth of output. Under Farley's first year, the economy fell back to 1.65. That's a 2% decline. Now, there's a broad-based set of declines underneath that. Construction, after Farley's war on the construction sector, construction declined by 35%. We gave Farley's government the quarry to run. The quarry declined by 35%. The quarry alone declined in output by 35%. All of these are signals of mismanagement and incompetence and a lack of capacity to lead. Agriculture, where we talk a lot about food security in the very first year of Farley's government, food security, and so on. Agriculture declined by 9.5%. And within that, egg production declined by 38%. Our famous small ruminants, goat and sheep, declined by 19%. And I've been going around to farmers trying to find out, well, why would that happen? And the farmers told me competition from Venezuelan sheep. And they experience it in Trinidad as well. Yeah. That requires leadership of the central government to understand the facts on the ground here and to help make policy to forestall that. Nothing was done, 19% decline. Fruits and vegetables in Tobago, 39% decline. So if you, and then where else? In the banking sector, 2.7% decline. Now, when that happens in banking, you know what the reason is for that. That is, banks withdraw credit, right? As Tobago businesses have been complaining about it. Banks withdraw credit. So the flow of credit services to businesses has fallen. Now, all of that has taken place in 2022, Farley's first year. Now, people will not forget that. Just before you come in, let me just tell you one last piece of data.
All right.
The CSO's data. This is THA data I'm giving you. But the CSO's data shows you that real household incomes in Tobago fell 6% in 2022. And poor people, the poorer half of Tobago, 8.5%. Now, look, these people are feeling these things in their pockets. I've never gotten more requests for help from me and my business in Tobago than last year, running into this year, from Tobagonians. And that tells you they're feeling it in their pocket. They will not forget that when they're evaluating Farley's government. They will say, you're looking after yourself, we're in trouble. And if you call an election, they will have the same experience that Watson got in Port of Spain, believe me, as a scientist.
Well, when you look at the figures, it's one thing, we're seeing all the declines, as you mentioned, in the various sectors and so on. But is that also taken into context all the external factors that are affecting it? You have COVID-19, we have businesses that were still struggling from the sea bridge issues, we have a decline in tourism numbers. Caribbean Airlines is a part of this whole problem with not giving us enough flights, discouraging people from coming here because people are choosing to go elsewhere because it's so difficult to get to Tobago. And with just 60,000 people on the island, it's difficult for business to thrive. We depend on the additional people to have a successful business. So then, if you put all those things, the global factors, all of that into context, is it fair to say that Mr. Augustine handled the economy badly?
Well, the people will know, no? The business people will know. The business people will know that COVID had nothing to do with the decline of the construction sector. Won't they know? They will know, for example, that it was Farley's religious war against the construction sector that shut it down and created the 35% decline. And business people will also know that it has nothing to do with the 35% decline in the quarry. That's just gross mismanagement. You can't say external factors cause that. You have, if you can't get your products, say, to market because you don't have an export license, then you look around in Tobago and find business people who might have export licenses and you work with them. But you can't know they have it unless you have a real conversation that is open to them. You can't know that by looking off your phone. You have to set up the conversation in the way I'm talking about it. So you could know from businesses what the possibilities are. You can't blame international forces for that. But let me give you the piece of data that tells you this has nothing to do with COVID. In 2020, when the PNM was running Tobago, COVID came. And the economy declined sharply to 1.61 billion. In 2021, when we began the exit from COVID, the PNM that we removed from office moved the economy within the dregs of COVID from 1.61 to 1.68. So if they're able to do it with their terrible policies, why would Farley cause a decline to 1.65? You can't blame COVID for that. It makes no sense to blame COVID for that. And it also makes no sense to blame international factors because Trinidad and Tobago's economy in the same period was growing, right? Moody's said we have a positive outlook. The IMF said we're doing okay, we're growing by 1.2%. Why would Tobago then decline by 2%? You can't blame international forces for that. That has to do with the way you manage the economy here in Tobago. And the key to that way you manage is leadership of policy making properly by first conversing properly with the government in Trinidad, and secondly by having a real active conversation going with the business community in Tobago. And that conversation could only be properly constituted when you, the executive, are having a relatively independent team engaging with the business community so they could bring the evidence and lay it before you and say, well, this is what we think, this is what we think you should do, these are the facts, and so on. Conversations with the banking sector. In 2022, when the commercial banks were declining by 2.7%, credit unions were growing by 7.8%. Right? Now, what does that tell you? Credit unions have the features, the basic features of a development bank. What you really ought to have done is to engage with the business community and the governments in Trinidad in order to work out the parameters for establishing a Tobago-based national development bank. That would then prevent the decline in the financial services that you saw in 2022. But this government locked itself away from the rest of us and did nothing about that. So at the end of the day, after 18 months in office, we are still without a development plan. We're still without a development bank. We're still without the parameters for setting it up. And so 2023, we're into August now. Nothing has been done to deal with the crisis of 2022. And you're going to have, especially with this Caribbean Airlines fallout here now, that's an external force, but it's an internal force if you think about your own responsibility and your leadership and the way you have to engage the conversation with Caribbean Airlines so you don't have to rely purely on the central government subsidy of the travel costs. You could say under the THA Act, you could say, look, the central government is putting $400 per trip. We're going to add 200 out of our budget. So you can't say the flights are not commercially viable. You have the right to intervene if that is critical to the development of the tourism sector. But sitting there and just grumbling about what the central government is doing and declaring war against them and then grumbling about the Caribbean Airlines without bringing forward proper competent leadership, people will know that partly because people like me will make it clear you can't just govern as though you're running your own house. And let me just give the people of Tobago one last piece of evidence around this. I am not a man who does go and preach in the churches like Farley does. But one guy came to my house last Sunday and he said to me, next time you go on television, tell Tobagonians, Jeremiah said, he's a church man now, so he quoted the Bible, the most basic requirement of a good leader is honesty. And Farley is suspect on that matter for this reason. Not because I all Rowley say and everybody else say. The evidence is there. Farley knew that the economy was in collapse when he presented the budget. His team presented the data I gave you. The CSO had already given me that data before the budget was published. Up to now, even though I went public with the data, up to now, Farley and his government has said nothing to the people of Tobago about that state of crisis and nothing about what would be done to deal with it. That's dishonesty. And that, for me, when you weigh that in the scales, the political fallout from that will be, you go to the polls for the general election, this team, they can't beat even the PNM. I say even. And if you go with the THA election, you can't beat the PNM. We're going to have to beat the PNM with a different approach to government that brings the people of Tobago fully into the process.
So then where does it leave us politically? Because if you have people that are not satisfied with what the PNM did over the last 20 years, and they're not satisfied with what Mr. Augustine has been doing over the last couple of years, then what is the option?
It is the normal responsibility of society. Every society, you look everywhere. If you look in Britain, as I've always pointed out last year, you would see it was the Conservative Party, not the Labour Party, that removed Boris Johnson for breaking the law and removed Liz Truss for incompetence. If we had set up the government properly in Tobago so that the party in power would have a majority of non-executive persons, not in the Executive Council, who could evaluate the work of the Executive Council and say, look, this team is not competent. We're going to move them. Then what we would have is a quick strike. Within 4 or 5 months, they show they don't know what they're doing. The majority party in the House would remove them. That's what happened to Boris Johnson. That's what happened to Liz Truss. Since we don't have that design, we have to wait till the next election. Well, what the people of Tobago need to do now is demand, politically, of course, through all of the regular media calls and all the other things, that we change the way the THA is designed. We have to reform the THA so that the structure allows us to discipline the Executive Council and not allow for either the incompetence or the excesses that we are seeing. I mean, this is easily the worst government we've put in power since 1980. Easily. I mean, this business of getting in trouble with the law and all that sort of stuff. You've never seen a government like that. People will not forget those things. So to move forward, we have to set up the THA differently so it could hold the Executive Council to account. As it is now, Farley could hold the secretaries to account, but nobody could hold him to account unless we go to an election. But you saw that good governance would allow us, like in the British case, to remove the chief secretary if he begins to display evidence by oversight mechanism we detect that he is causing trouble for Tobago that we can't tolerate. That has to be dealt with by changing the structure of the THA. And that's the essence of the fight for autonomy. And if we can't wait on Farley, all the rest of us have to get up and clamor for autonomy so we could set up our government properly to work the way we want it to work.
All right. Well, we're going to put a pause there on the conversation because we got to take a quick break. But viewers, please don't go anywhere because we'll be continuing with Dr. Vanish James when we return.
Are you flood ready? Recycle and properly dispose of large waste. Avoid sweeping yard clippings or trash into drains. Plant trees to avoid soil erosion. An initiative to help people prevent, prepare, recover. Tatil, where people are people.
Summerama, real steam for the summer at standard. Is a dream for the summer. Dreamy, steamy, standard. What you have? All the best deals, no drama.
Standard be beat like a hammer. Go tell your friend, tell your papa, tell your mama. We got more. Standards are what you're searching for. Quality brand, discounts galore. New things for the summer, online in store. Summertime is here, so make the most out of it at Standard. Never beaten on quality and price. Ignite.
The best place to stay in Tobago is at Thorn's Place with rates starting as low as 200 TT. Call or WhatsApp 745-7306 or 682-8676. We are located uptown Scarborough, 5 minutes away from the port. Remember, at Thorn's Place, our aim is to make your stay safe and affordable.
MI4 Security Services Company is the most advanced security service in Tobago. Ask about our cash in transit service. It's safe, risk-free, reliable, and timely. We provide safe banking delivery for all business types and sizes with highly trained staff, 24/7 monitoring, coordinated emergency response, and a well-maintained fleet of armored vehicles. Contact us at 660-7723 or visit our website at www.mi4securitytt.com to sign up today.
October will never be better with Tobago Carnival fever. Book your passage and come on over. Yeah. Hey.
Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are continuing our conversations this morning with economist Dr. Vanish James as we take a look at what's been going on politically within our space. And we know, of course, how closely tied economy is with politics. Part of how we can excel within our space is that whole question of autonomy. We spent quite a bit of this hour speaking about that. But it's a conversation that I think some of us here in Tobago are also getting tired of because it's happening the same way over and over and over again. We all understand we need greater autonomy, but all the efforts that have gone before have proved futile. So then,
well,
what now?
I am not tired, and I'm an old man, and I don't think young people ought to be tired either. One of the things people have to know in a place like Tobago is development is difficult business. Mm-hmm. Remember, it's three things we have to get right simultaneously. We have to learn how to set up our government and our institutions properly. The government makes plans and policies and so on. That has to be set up properly to allow them to do that right. And doing correct policies and plans is all about the way you bring the people in. So remember in this business, good policy doesn't mean scientific policy alone. It also means policies the people agree with via the mechanisms of participation you make available to them. That's one of the reasons I've been trying to pound into the heads of all of these guys. That inclusive government rather than town hall meetings is the way you're going to help Tobago. Town hall meetings might put you in power, but it won't get you development.
And what specific part of, inclusive government? Like, what's an example of that exclusive government that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, all right. The business of the information that makes government work well is at the heart of this conversation. Right now, the way the THA makes policy is to rely fundamentally on the public servants. And the public servants essentially are set up there to do science, to use statistics and scientific research and agricultural research and stuff like that, and come up with a way to judge where we have to go. That's the way it's done. But if you look in the US, or even in Britain, or in Finland, for example, right, a very beautiful case, what you will see is that there's a second set of information that really allows you to get policy right. And I can explain it in a simple way. When I go out and do a survey, I go with a form, and I have a very restrictive framework in which businesses could give me information, right? We're currently doing that kind of survey on the fisheries industry for Shell. Now, we know we'll get a limited frame of information, but you need another type of information. When you go to a businessman and you say, well, what is it you're doing? The businessman don't just fill out a form. He gives you details about what he's trying to do and why it would work. That set of details from everybody is what the good governance arrangements really allow you to collect. When you set up the government in such a way that you could call everybody in to the government and gather the data, right, from them as to what they mean, what they're trying, what they're willing to do in detail, that is the critical piece of data that allows you to complement what the public servants bring and make good judgment. So you have to set up your government to get the kind of information you need in order to get sound policy made, right? The thing about us is we can't forget, you can't take development for granted in Tobago. If you don't make good policy, you can't get development in Tobago. So you've got to have a proper way to get good policy made. And that's what inclusive government is all about. And that inclusive government inside the THA means it's not policy made by the Executive Council, instructed by the public service. It is a good policy made by the legislature, good law made by the legislature, having heard from the people properly, to restrict and constrain and contain the policies that the Executive Council and the public service would want to make. So that framework is what we have to put in place here. Otherwise, Tobago has no chance to develop.
Now, Dr. James, I know that you're someone that's quite on the ground and you have been collecting data and so on your own. So from some of the data that you've collected, what do you think is one of those policies that we need to put in place?
Well, apart from what I'm saying there about,
yes,
yeah, because much of it you get from the actual
Let's say in terms of agriculture, right? What is one of those policies that we need in agriculture to take it forward?
All right. The way I would understand agriculture is essentially this. It is part of our effort to look after ourselves internally,
yes,
to provision ourselves. That's the whole idea behind food security. The evidence we have from all the studies we've done as economists around the world, to say nothing of what I and others have been doing in the region, is that that means productivity growth in agriculture. And to get productivity growth in agriculture in a place like Tobago, with all the terrible terrain and all that sort of stuff that we're working with, you have to be looking first and foremost at elaborate training of your farmers to work with modern technologies that they can pick from among all the options that are available. They won't have access to tractors, for example. You can't go too far with that in the terrain we have. But they will have access to other things, varieties, fertilizers, a whole range of other things. And if they're knowingly doing what they're doing, if they are trained properly. Long ago, we used to have an extension service. I grew up learning agriculture from the extension officer that used to come on my father's farm. That's where you get a big step. But you have to train your farmers. We had off-farm school and all those kinds of things. What it all comes down to is high-tech farming. High-tech farming, I went to see an engineer the other day who was explaining to me how to set up the aquaculture. And this is an engineer who switched to doing agriculture using these technologies. And she was showing me, well, this is how you do it. That's a big learning experience. I plan to try it. My point is, that's the kind of learning that has to be going on all the time for something like agriculture. And then, of course, post-harvest handling of foods. Tobago is a small place, so if you raise productivity in agriculture, you have to be producing the things in a way that allows you to export some of it. So if you're exporting eggs, you're not in business. But if you're exporting stuff made from eggs, then what you have is a real chance to export that to Trinidad and maybe the rest of the region and the rest of the world to get value added at a high rate in Tobago's agriculture. That's the kind of thing we have to be talking about.
So in
and
other
you can't
words,
get that unless you're talking to your farmers.
So in other words, you think that we should focus in terms of agriculture, in terms of export of agriculture, should focus on the value-added products.
High-tech farming. High-tech farming and whatever the farmers and the industrialists are saying is possible. Not low-tech farming of the kind that I do. I I did a first degree, half of which was agricultural economics. I grew up in agriculture, and I could tell you, I can't farm on a scale and in a way that is required for me to live on farming. So you've got to get that process right. And that is not just true for agriculture. In services, for example, including tourism services, the biggest thing you have to think about is if you're going to thrive in the modern world, you have to be producing not just season and sand tourism and even single events tourism. You kind of have to do, what Tobago is trying is just like what Jamaica is trying. And what Jamaica has gotten from that approach to tourism is $5,600 per person per year. If you look at what the Cayman Islands tried, you will see how to get 90,000. Trinidad and Tobago get 19,000 from oil and gas. Cayman Islands without oil and gas, 90,000. Bermuda, without oil and gas, 115,000. How is that possible? Because they follow a central principle of development economics, which is what you have to specialize in is making what we call capital output. So in other words, in the case of Tobago, instead of exporting season and sand and fat and stuff like that, that too, you do that too. Anchor. You have to enter into high quality exportable capital services like education. And you have to team up with the world to do it. That's what the Cayman Islands did with their financial services. They brought the whole world in, PwC, all of these big firms. And their tourism caters to that. And so what they do is, instead of having Marriott build hotels, 80% of their room stock is 10 rooms or less, A class, $150 a night. Lawyers could come in for 6 months and use that kind of facility. That's the kind of way you have. But you need to have a conversation with the society and the world in order to craft that, because Tobago can't make any progress on any of these fronts alone, with the people we have here alone. You have to move in the direction of a real conversation with everybody so that people, Tobagonians abroad, business people who want to come, all of them could help you to frame what is to be done. And there's a critical part to that that goes to why you need autonomy. That ain't possible unless you have a real entrepreneurial development program in Tobago, where you make it possible for good young entrepreneurs coming from all around the world to locate here. That means you have to set the policy framework to attract them, to make them get access to citizenship and all those kinds of things in order to come here and set up the operations. Tobago has to become the best place for them to operate.
So in other words, you're saying we should adopt, I can't remember the name of what it's called, but I know a lot of the other Caribbean islands have it.
Citizen by investment. Exactly.
So that's what we need here.
Something like that. But I know their programs, and I would do Tobago's programs a little differently. The way you choose, however, to do it ultimately comes down to the kind of conversation you have with the potential investors. They'll tell you what they really need. So good governance is the heart of the necessary basis on which you could get this kind of 134-year-old problem that we have here to be sorted out. If you don't have the good governance thing right, you can't get the innovation right, you can't get the economic restructuring right, and you can't get those right, you can't get development. So this is a critical thing that tells Tobagonians we're wasting time the way we're going now. We have to change our approach, and the first step is good governance to hear from everybody. And that ain't town meetings, that ain't town hall meetings.
It goes beyond.
That's about internal arrangements in the THA. I don't know why that is such a hard thing. The science tells you that. I'm not sure, other than the taste for dictatorship and the taste for authoritarian behavior, I'm not sure why we missed the opportunity we missed when we removed the PNM. The PNM has said they don't want to change the rules. They didn't want to do any serious development planning with us, so they bring experts from outside. When Fali and them asked me to, I said, well, the only way for us to do a serious plan for Tobago is to bring everybody into the process. They didn't want to do that. The fear of democracy, in my view, is the reason we are where we are today. And that fear has to be dealt with by the population. We have to demand as a people that no government should operate the way Fali and his government is operating. operating.
All right, and I think that's a good point to leave this conversation on. I want to thank you so much, Dr. James, for being on with us and for giving us your perspectives. And it leaves me thinking a little bit about that CDP plan that was there that never really got to put into place. But hey, that's a conversation for another day.
Created by an expert, that can't work.
Yes. Anyways, viewers, thank you for being with us, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful day, and we will see you again tomorrow.
Tobago updates.